There we go, mic is on, so hopefully you can hear me, both live and hopefully in the future. So, welcome to the second, well technically third episode of our live streams here at Mead Hall Gaming, and theoretically the first sort of fully fleshed out one, as in our hobby hall. So this will be a regular slot on a Sunday afternoon, where I'll be sat down, or one of the team will be sat down doing some painting or some building of hobby projects. So hopefully we will have a bit of fun and we'll get engaged in various hobby projects and hopefully have a discussion, either related to what we're doing on the table or what's going on in the Warhammer hobby or hobbies in general. As hopefully you will also see that we're starting to potentially dip our toes into D&D. So there might be other elements we can discuss as well. But without further ado, we should probably have a look at what's on the table today, which you can kind of see in the bottom corner there, but let's bring that up into the main focus. So, today, on my little tray, we have quite a few little projects to work on. So, the idea is going to be that we're going to try and paint up as much of this as possible in the next couple of hours, and we shall go from there. Now, the reason why I've got quite so many little projects here is because these two projects here, so the Basilisk Artillery and the Acastus Knight Pypherions, are both going to require all-over washes. The Basilisk will actually require 2 all-over washes, so there's going to be a bit of downtime between what we're actually going to be able to do. So hopefully, the way I'll manage it, we will actually be able to sort of jump from one project to the next and never have anything to stop, or no point in which we need to stop, in theory. In addition, I finished painting these guys up from the previous stream. My little warglaives, my knight armigers, and we've got 9 of those little guys ready to roll. However, the only thing that's missing is I haven't got some art coat on the eye lenses yet, just to give them that little sheen, so we're going to also do that as well, which probably won't even take 5 minutes, so we'll get on and do that as well. Alright, so what I'm going to do for now is I'm going to pop these over here, ready to go. There we are. We'll leave the Pypherions here for now, because what we'll do is we're going to start on the Basilisks, because the Basilisks, the way my scheme works, is they actually require a wash straight away after base coating. So we're going to start with them, and we're going to slap on a big old wash and get them started. So I'm going to pop these to one side, out of the way. So one thing it's probably worth noting is that all of these do have magnets in the bases, and these are 3D printed bases which I've put the magnet slots into. So these just use I think they're 6mm by 1mm magnets, so they're not very strong, which can be a bit of an issue sometimes, particularly on some of the larger bases, as they do have a tendency to warp a little bit, and for the life of me I can't seem to fix it completely. So the Pypherions, for example, they've got a little bit of warping on the base, which means the magnets definitely don't stick as well as I would like. But hopefully, because of the sheer scale of models I have and will continue to have, once you start pressing them together, they should kind of lock in place anyway. So yeah, let's continue. So let's grab our basilisks and we'll rank them up. Here. Now, one thing I like about these square bases, which I will talk about why they're on squares, because that's not common in Legions, or it's not. I say it's not common. I mean, it might be common among the community, but it's certainly not the way GW intended for them to be. They're supposed to be on. Well, I mean, vehicles aren't even supposed to be on bases at all. But we like bases, so we've put bases on all of ours, and we've also gone with squares. So, with these guys, they've been primed in black. That's per standard. I pretty much base everything in black. That is partly because that's the way I learned 20 odd years ago, but well, more than 20 years ago, 15, 16 years ago. Wait, hang on. Did I say 10 or 20? Either way, about 15, 16 years ago. But also because the black prime is a nice base, and then I tend to zenithal most of my models, because then anything that's not hit by the zenithal is in shadow and I don't have to paint it. Very much getting into that whole concept of being the lazy painter. So these have got their prime on, and then I've went around with an airbrush pre-stream, because we don't really want to be firing off an airbrush on stream, I don't think. My nice new airbrush, as my old one broke a couple of weeks ago. And they've had a Rune Lord brass sprayed over them. Rune Lord brass is definitely my favourite metallic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the first wash, and the first wash is not a traditional wash. It is Rattling Grime Contrast, which seems to work very nicely to really dirty this all down. So we're going to grab that. I've got a little palette to the side, which is my wet palette, which isn't okay. I've got a little syringe full of deionized water here, which I'm just going to whack into the palette just to give it a little bit more moisture, because it's looking the foam is actually nicely damp, but I like to have a little bit in the palette itself, just to keep it running. What we're going to do is we're going to grab a nice big-ish brush. I think that will probably do. This is one of my shade brushes, and we're just going to lather the entire models in this Rattling Grime. You also notice I've got little accent pieces on the bases, so like an expended shell or a drop shell, a bit of debris, just to make the bases look a little bit more interesting, make them look like they're, you know, in an active environment in some way, shape or form. I'm going to pop a bit of a dollop there, wet the brush just a little bit, and off we go. So as you can see, I don't know if you can see, but there's a little bit of a transition there where there's a bit of black still here. That's fine, that just adds a little bit of a shadow effect, you know, and all this all this stuff on the underside I'm not really worried about. You're never going to see it. And I tend to find that also applies to 40k as well. You know, 28mm miniatures, I do the exact same really. But it's even more true, I think, in Legions, where the scale is quite so small, or so much smaller. I feel like that is definitely even more true. You know, you're looking at these models from, you know, 4 or 5 feet away, you're not really going to see that. So it's even more forgiving, if that's something you're ever going to be worried about. So normally I just like to pick a point where to start me brushing and run round. Now, because this is a contrast as well, they dry pretty quick, so we want to get this on relatively quick. So you want to try and focus on panels or areas where you can get in there quick and easy and get that whole panel done very quickly. And I'm just realising that the amount of contrast I put on my palette is barely enough to do 2 tracks, so I definitely need a much bigger squeeze on the bowl. So this is going to massively darken it down, which is fine, that's what I want to go for. But we are going to lighten up a little bit with the next stage that comes after this, and then we'll again darken it back down again in a subsequent phase after that. So it's kind of a balancing act between getting what I want, but I have found that this method produces exactly what I want, so that's what I'm going to stick with. And let's get all over that. There we go. Just a little bit thick there, so we're just going to pull that away with a brush. And there we go, that is one done already. I say done, I mean, in theory with Legions you probably could actually just say you're done with that. I'm not going to. and I don't think a lot of you would be happy with that, but you could, in theory, just call that done, quite literally, if you really wanted to, or even just pick out that big gun barrel and be done with it. But I like to add a little bit more onto it, just to give it a bit of interest. So, but you know, I don't pick out every individual detail by any means necessary. In fact, I quite specifically don't pick out some details, because one, they'll never really get seen and they kind of blend in anyway, and two, I'm a lazy painter, so if I can avoid painting something because it's unnecessary or not going to be particularly prominent, I will. So, there we go. Get that all on there. So, here we go. So I did say I was going to mention sort of the reason why we're using our square bases, and very specifically we've got basically a rule of thumb with basing. So a lot of the infantry models and the like are all still based on the round bases. Again, I still use my 3D printed ones with the magnet slots in, but you could easily just use the normal GW bases without issue, and it was still applied to the sort of home rules, or the Mead Hall addendum, if you like, of rules. And effectively what we've decided is, because the game relies quite a lot, particularly with larger models or vehicles and above, there are certain rules that interact with facings, so whether you're in front of or behind a vehicle. So if you look at this one, basically if I put my brush about there, everything here is the front and everything back here is obviously the back. Now on a round base, that does provide a little bit of ambiguity, because of, you know, this model, for example, could be tilted in a certain angle and it's not perfectly straight, and it could mean that you're measuring or looking at the angle slightly wrong. And it's easy enough to do, and it's not necessarily going to be something that people are going to do intentionally, but it can quite easily lead to a little bit of confusion or questions as to whether you've got front or rear arc facing. The square bases, though, provide a very obvious visual clue as to the facing of the model. So I can position this on the base in any sort of direction, but this base is the finite yes, no, this is front and back. So I can very clearly see on this base that that's about halfway, therefore if you're firing beyond this point, you're hitting my back arc. Nice and simple. And so we do that with anything that interacts with the facings rule, which is basically a universal rule of facing or front arc and back arcs. And predominantly everything that's a vehicle or above, and I don't think there's an exception to this rule, has a special rule that if you're shooting at a target from its rear arc, you get a +1 to your AP. Now there are a couple of rules that sort of counter that a little bit, like light AT weapons or light anti-tank weapons. They never get that extra AP. It very specifically states in the rules that although light AT weapons go to 0 AP regardless of their AP when firing at a vehicle, and it very specifically states in the rule that this also applies when you're getting the bonus AP from firing into the rear. You don't get to apply that extra AP. Okay, which I think seems fair enough. I don't have any issues with that as a rule or as a concept. You know, these are light anti-tank weapons. They're designed to be able to potentially damage a vehicle, but that's not their primary intention, I suppose. It's more of a it basically allows them to target the vehicle in the first place, so that is kind of the benefit, whereas anything that's not light 18 is just a light weapon, can't damage a vehicle at all, which is quite realistic, really. I mean, your low caliber infantry weapons aren't going to penetrate the hull of a massive war walker or a titan, even something as small as this basilisk, you know, its armor plates, they ain't gonna go down to even a basic Astartes bolter, because I'd imagine the armor has probably been designed with that in mind by this point in the narrative. I mean, one could argue, I suppose, that bolters might be counter designed to punch through it, blah blah blah, but you know, at the end of the day, it's nice and thematic that infantry can't just, you know, blow up vehicles with their basic infantry bolters. So we're not going to look too far into that. We're just going to call that what it is and play by the rules, which I agree with and we're happy with. So that's not a problem. Now I bring that up because obviously that we as a team and as Mead Hall, we've got sort of a set of house rules where we sort of change a few things that we're not 100% happy with or that we think could be improved slightly. And one of those things, and well, not one of those things, but that does sort of mean that I do mention it because, you know, it's worth noting that these are rules that we are happy with and we haven't changed or modified in any way. And when you start seeing us play some games, which hopefully will be sooner rather than later, hopefully we'll get some recording done for a Legions game in January. That's the goal, which is one of the reasons why I'm powering through a massive pile of models at the moment to try and get them all ready. Next up is all the terrain, which is all ready, pretty much ready to go. I just need to paint it. You'll see some of our custom rules or house rulings on certain things. So one of them obviously is the square bases. You know, anything that deals with facings must be on square bases. That is just the standard Mead Hall expectation. But anything that isn't or doesn't interact with facings will be on round bases. Now I'm not so I don't think we're going to be strict on that. I think if one of the guys wanted to base their infantry on square bases, then I don't really see an issue with that. You know, I was tempted to, I have to say, mainly because I just like the ability to rank things up in nice coordinated lines like that. It does look quite nice. I mean, it reminds me of the old Warhammer fantasy days, but obviously that doesn't really apply very well in a more modern style warfare setting. Still looks cool, but and it doesn't interact too well when infantry can move around certain objects and terrain features that vehicles just don't anyway. So it is probably better to have them on round bases regardless. But you know, if someone wants to put them on squares and have everything uniform and on squares, that's fair enough. But there is obviously that very nice visual identification that, you know, the stuff that's on squares very clearly interacts with facing rules, so it's worth then checking, how does that interact with a facing rule then? Especially if it's something that you don't expect to. So there might be some cases where some infantry will be on square bases. Now, we haven't seen that, I don't believe, in any of the current rules, where any of the infantry units actually interact with facings beyond, obviously, targeting vehicles. That might not be true anymore, because I haven't actually, I'll be honest, looked at any of the Mechanicum units and abilities yet, which I probably should do, actually, because there's probably going to be some interesting things in there. But as yet, I haven't. But we know at some point, I know Zeta, who was on the first stream and was chatting with me on the second, and will probably be doing their own streams at some point in the nearish future. He himself has also got a desire to have some Breacher Marines, which currently don't exist in Legions, and I would imagine at some point they will, based on what we've seen from some interviews during reveal shows. It does sound like pretty much everything that exists in the Horus Heresy set will eventually make its way to Legions. That seems to be very much what they've well, outright stated, not even implied, which would include, I assume, Breachers or Breacher Marines. But at the moment, as far as I know, the Breacher Marine kit isn't actually a plastic kit yet. Now, the probability is it does exist in plastic. There's a plastic version of it in existence ready to be released at some point in time, but we don't know when that is. I mean, I think this time last year, they released the Mark 6 Jump Pack Marines around Christmas, or just before Christmas. Or it was announced around this sort of time, I think, if I recall correctly. Because I remember thinking at the time, oh, I'd love to get my hands on those, because at the time I was very much into the Alpha Legion, and I've actually built and converted up a relatively small 40k army based on the Heresy kits as Alpha Legion. And I do have a 2,000 points Legions Astartes force, which I was very much intending to sort of be the main focus of my armies for Legions and for 40k. But we'll come back to that in a minute, because otherwise I'm going to sidetrack myself. However, yes, so there is a possibility that breaches are going to be kind of plastic for both systems at some point, and I don't know whether Heresy or Legions will get them first. I imagine they will. I imagine Heresy will get them first, but that's not always true. I mean, we know, for example, obviously the Dark Mechanicus has finally gotten models, and not only models but plastic models, first introduced here in Legions, which does imply that, you know, sometimes Legions might get the models in plastic first. Now, I don't know if there's any other examples of that. Well, actually, I can think of one, which I believe is the Malcador. Is it the Malcador? Or no, is it the Valdor, the big neutron laser battle tank for the Auxilia? Now, I believe, if I remember correctly, that has just been announced recently as a new plastic kit for the Horus Heresy range. Now, it might have been the Malcador Infernus, it might have been the Valdor, it could have been both, as they're pretty much the same chassis anyway. As far as I'm aware, I haven't got the kit for Legions, so I can't confirm, and I don't directly recall what was said on the stream. But obviously Legions has had that for quite a while now. I don't know if it was in the first releases or a little bit after, but they have been around now for a little while. So Legions can get some of the kits before the main Heresy line, and Breachers could be in one or the other. But regardless, the Breachers are pretty much guaranteed to be brought out in plastic at some point for both systems. But until then, if Zeta wanted to actually have these Breacher Marines, we'd have to make some rules. Now, obviously, acquiring the models might be, in theory, difficult, but we do have access to 3D printers, and there are some fantastic sculptors online that have sort of gone ahead and miniaturized a lot of models that currently don't have 8mm scale equivalents, and obviously quite a few that do. Please, GW, don't go around and get rid of them all, please. I very much am quite into the plastic kits. I enjoy painting them. I think they're obviously more durable than resin, unless you're. I think even if you're paying for really high quality resins, I think the plastic molded kits are always going to be more durable, pretty much regardless. But certainly, based on my experience with commercial resins that you can buy for commercial printers, the plastic kits are more durable. And that's not to say that I don't have some 3D printed elements, which I'm going to come on to very shortly, and obviously one of them is actually sat right in front of me, which is those little armigers there, my Warglaives. Now they're 3D printed, mainly because, and I'm sorry GW, but your resins are terrible. I refuse to use your resins because not only are they terrible, but you also ask for an astronomical price for them. So why am I going to pay for terrible resin prints or products when I can print good, reliable and sturdier resin products on my own home printer. That's just a no-brainer. And my Astartes force does have, now this was where I broke my rule a little bit. I have got a few 3D printed flyers in that kit, in that army, but that's because I just wanted to get them on the table quickly and didn't have the money to buy the full kits, and I already had the resin there. And I originally was going to try and make a Thunderhawk, but I found a file for a beautiful, beautiful rendition of the Stormbird kit, which is one of my favourite units in the game. And in general, I'm a big fan of flyers and the idea of a massed infantry flying assault force. Mainly from the big Star Wars scene in episodes, primarily episode 2, which, you know, not the best movie in the world, but I still enjoy it. And the scene with the gunships flying into the arena, strafing, and then the clone troopers dropping out and firing off into the crowds and stuff was phenomenal, and I've always loved that idea. So I very much wanted to build an Astartes army based around dropships. So an Alpha Legion airstrike force with, you know, Astartes teams jumping out of gunships. So I've got a few 3D printed flyers, including 2 3D printed Stormbird gunships, and we've actually created, or I've actually written the rules for these things, and we have playtested them now a few times. And to be fair, I think we've pretty much nailed the rules first time out, as we've not had any sort of very obvious issues with the strength of the unit. They do exactly what they're supposed to do. They transport stuff. They kick out a little bit of firepower, but nothing too special. They have a nice sizable transport capacity, which I've based both on the lore as well as the in-game rules. So I think I've given it a transport capacity of 12, which does mean you can actually get a full sort of Terminator detachment in there quite nicely, or, you know, I think you can get six dreadnoughts in there and stuff like that, so you can get a decent little whack of models in there. Now, before I continue down that line, I'm just going to point out that they've all been washed and ready. Hopefully the contrast will dry relatively quickly, but while that's going and drying, what we'll do, and we will come back to these two in a little bit, I'm just going to pop that to one side for a minute. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly go over these warglaives and just give them some hard coat varnish on their eye lenses. And once that's done, they're actually done and complete, and they'll be going up on my Instagram story. So that'll be them done, which will be technically 3 knight units done for my new knight house, which I'll discuss in a little bit, potentially. But you can actually, as far as the new Dark Mechanicum rules expansion, you can actually run them as a unit of 9. And the benefit of running them in a unit of 9 is that they are actually cheaper to run. Every expansion is, I think, there are 180 points for 3, and then I think you get a 20-point discount for every successive set of 3 you put on. I don't think that's stacking. I think you get I think it's 160 points for the extra 3 to make 6. And I think it's another 160 points then for the last lot. I might be wrong, I need to double check. It might be even cheaper again to run 9. But I certainly know from going from 3 to 6 is a bit of a points decrease, which, you know, can be quite nice if you're a little bit lacking in points and you want more bodies on the table. But my initial thinking really is to run them in units of 3. Because then you've got more mobility on the table, which is always quite useful, especially if you're running something like Knights, where you're going to have potentially significantly less number of units to run against, say, an Astartes, Auxilia, or Mechanicum force. Obviously, you'll probably be outstripping a Titan Legion, which I also have a relatively decent-sized Titan Legion. I think I've got just over 2,000 points of Titans now. And it's actually very much the Titan kits that inspired me to go down the route of Knights and Titans as my main force, although I'm still very much, as you can see, into the Auxilia as well. My Astartes forces in the Alpha Legion, I think I'm going to leave them at their 2,000 points I've got for them now. I probably will expand them a little bit at some point in time, but they're not going to be a focus. I don't really want to be trying to run 4 different armies in Legions, although the idea is it's going to be one sort of super faction headed by one of 3. Doesn't mean that I can't use other factions at some point in the future, and I very much probably will end up using the Alpha Legion at various points. And again, one of the things I love about the Alpha Legion is they're very good for just dropping into any army. Because of the nature of their lore, they kind of just turn up and do their own thing, and can help or be a hindrance, based on the whim or the nature of the time. So that I like, and I'm going to keep that little bit of info and that army in my back pocket as something to just add in, or if I fancy something a bit different. And it conforms to the playstyle I like, which is my sort of flyer-based infantry formations that kind of just drop in and say hi whenever I want them to. Right, that's them done. That was really quick and really easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this other box, my really useful boxes with the magnets in them, or magnet sheets, and we're just going to pop them in there. This is the start of my Knights box. My Auxilia box is basically full, and is about to get a massive reinforcement as well, because I already know for Christmas I've got the Auxilia Battle Force box, which is going to double my army in straight away. So I'm just going to have a quick drink. And my Astartes box is full. In fact, and I've also got another box, a larger box, full of all the planes. And that box again is actually full of planes. My Titan box isn't full yet, but you don't really need a full one to have a lot, especially as you can see up here. I've got the War Master, which I'm very happy with. Super beautiful model. And it's the model that inspired me to move into Knights and Titans. And quite possibly, depending on how I feel about the way things are going with Legions, when I go back to start doing some 40k stuff, I very much might start a Knight army. But it won't be a pure Knight army, because, I want to have a little bit of flexibility. Very much like in Legions, I don't just want the Knights, I want the Titans as well, but I also want the Auxiliaries. The Auxiliaries very much add a bit of flavour and a bit of, tactical flexibility, which you don't always get if you're just running that one individual faction, or even just... The Knights and Titans are quite similar in a lot of ways, and kind of fill the same niches, just in different scales, which is great, and I love that. But I do like to have, the serfs, if we like, if we're going to use the knight terminology, maybe. So we're definitely going to have a nice force of those. And my next project, once I've got the battle force done for the Auxiliary or Auxilia and get these bits done, is I want to push and sort of adopt the same ideology that I wanted from the Astartes with the sort of flyer focused force. So I'm actually going to shift my auxiliaries, because I'll already have quite a few tanks and artillery and stuff like that, so I've got a nice baseline for an auxiliary force. But then I want to move into turning them into an aggressive, flyer-focused force of auxilia. So I'm going to invest in getting some Arvus Lighters, so that I can fly on in with my infantry forces and do some damage that way, and also get some proper fighter planes as well to escort them in, so it'll look like a real cool invasion force from the air, which will fill some niches that the Knights and the Titans don't have with the infantry as well, but also allowing them to keep up with the faster Knights as well, and provide that air support, because air support is something that the Knights definitely lack. I think. I mean, these guys have got the Helios missiles, so they do have some Skyfire, and the Warmaster has his anti-air guns on the top potentially. You can have the mortars or the anti-air guns. So there's a little bit there, and I have found that the Vulcan Mega Bolter, just by sheer number of dice, can actually do some damage to flyers. So I could grab a couple of Warhounds and chuck some Vulcan Mega Bolters on them, which gives you a little bit of potential anti-air. And you can give the Warmaster a couple of them as well. So there are ways of getting some anti-air capable units on the table, which is quite nice. But I like planes, so I definitely want planes. And at the moment I'm thinking of getting a couple of units of strike fighters, and obviously a bunch of Arvus Lighters to transport my masses of infantry, as I'm going to have something like 24 bases of tertios. So that's nearly 3 boxes, I think, of Arvus Lighters already, because I can't quite remember whether the Arvus Lighters have what transport capacity they have, whether it's 1 or 2. Because of their tiny size, I'm guessing it's probably only 1, which means I'm going to need a plane for every base. But I also believe that the box does come with 10 in them, so it's not that bad. You then account for the 12 extra bases of Flamers I've got in there, and the 12 extra bases I'll have of the Bellatari, the axes, as well. That's quite a few more, so I'd need quite a few boxes of flyers to make it all work. I need to double check if the Ogryn can ride in them as well, because I don't believe the Ogryn have the bulky keyword for some reason. So in theory you could also put the Ogryn in there as well. But I'm also going to have some Dracosians thanks to the Battle Force box, so I'm kind of thinking that I might, to theme things slightly, I think the baseline human infantry will be very much in the plains, and then if I want to bring the human auxiliaries, they tend to be ferried in by the Dracosian transports. Unless they obviously start releasing any new transport flyers for the auxilia, which would be quite nice, to be honest, because I'd like to see some more flyer options. Now I'm just testing out the brush size on here, see whether I feel like I can get into all the nooks and crannies I want to without going too over the top. I don't need to be too controlled here, because I'm just going to be basing all the panels in red. I think this brush will probably do the job nicely, especially as there's some bigger panels up here to do. So, got a nice little banner there. We can do a little bit of custom heraldry on, I think. So I want each of these knights to have some custom heraldry. So, let's get on with some base coating. Now this stage, we are just going to be slapping on some Mephiston red onto those panels. Let's go in there, and now I'm not being too picky or too clean here, because I'm going to go over all that trim anyway, with my favourite metal in the Runelord brass. And I do use a lot of Runelord brass, which is why I also have another pot or two hidden away in my my spare paint box, because I use quite a lot of it. But yeah, so I don't need to be too worried about going over the metal here, because it's all going to get gone over again anyway. I also know I'm going to be doing probably 2 passes of Mephiston red just to get a decent coverage. you probably, if you were just using this, want to do 3. But what's going to happen is once I've done the two layers of Mephiston red, it's gonna well, I'm obviously going to paint some other bits before this, but I'm then going to actually base coat the entire model, or shade the entire model in Nuln Oil, just to pull out all the details, because we'll do some other metal work as well. And then once that's all done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over all these armour panels with the Blood Angels Red contrast paint, which really, it's really subtle. It's a really subtle colour shift, but it really does, for me, just make that red really pop and stand out against the bronze panels, the bronze trim, and kind of unifies the colour a bit as well. So two coats of Mephiston red, the wash, and then the final coat of Blood Angels just finishes it off, and doesn't really need, so it doesn't really matter too much, I don't really think, if there's a little bit of metallic showing through from the second coat of this, because it will get covered up by the Blood Angels on that third coat anyway. Let alone the fact that it's all going to be darkened down with the Nuln Oil as well, so it's not visible. If you look at my armigers there, they look like pure red panels. They don't look, you can't see any of the metal work. So that's what we want to see. Now you could, in theory, I think, build this in such a way that you don't have to glue down these panels at the bottom, but the problem is there's so much of this kit, it's kind of requires you to have all the panels in place to build it properly. I just decided that I'd stick them all down anyway, because it's not too hard to get into all those nooks and crannies, and again, because of the way it's zenithal these in with the lead belcher, so it's actually quite easy to get in there, and the bits that I can't get to, generally speaking, also haven't been hit by the zenithal, so they're already black and therefore in shadow and invisible. So it's not really an issue. And if I do spot a bit that I just can't get to with a brush, and if it should be in a place at that point where it's not going to be visible, because if I can't get to it with the brush, it's probably not going to be a very visible element. So if it has got a bit of metal on it and it annoys me, I will just grab a bit of black and I'll just jam the brush in there to turn it into a shadow. Which honestly I don't think I haven't done on any of the knights so far. I have done it on a model before, which I think, if I remember right, was when I was doing some Space Marine models and they had their guns across their chests, and some of the base coat got in behind, and you just couldn't get the brush in there to sort of paint the inside effectively. This was back before I started sub-assembling Marines, which I do, because it does just make it easier most of the time. Well, I say that, it's actually mostly because all of my Marines are actually magnetised. Every arm on every Marine is magnetised, which is probably a little bit over the top for most people, but it's going to benefit me massively when I eventually do get back to 40k, and if I decide to go down the Knight route, because what I will be doing is I will be building it with the Inquisition rules in mind, so that I can bring in some allies. And I've very much got a very custom Knight house and a very custom Auxilia force, a custom Titan Legion, and it would be nice to be able to incorporate some of the my own design ideas into those rules. So, for example, I've got some Alpha Legion painted up, and I've also got quite a few that has been built base coated, but not actually finished in any way, shape or form. I say base coated, I mean primed and zenithalled, but never actually got any further than that. I was thinking I could turn those into my Deathwatch equivalents, so I could actually have some Deathwatch. I can use the Deathwatch rules to represent Alpha Legion specialists that have been brought in to aid the Night Houses in their operations. Or alternatively, you know, maybe the Alpha Legion have hired the big knights to act as the main crux of a force, or you know, manipulated them in some way to help out, etc., etc. You know how it all. Well, hopefully you probably know how it all goes with Alpha Legion. You never know. So you know, Deathwatch kill teams wouldn't be hard to represent, as I've already got some magnetized marine bodies. In fact, I've got one unit that is fully painted, but fully magnetized. So if I need any different arms to represent some different weapons or loadout options, I can just make some new ones and pop them on nice and easy without any issues. Now I was also thinking I've got some Terminator kits that I could use, so I might be able to make myself like a little psychic kill team. It's like a psychic Terminator death squad for my Alpha Legion, which, you know, in the scope of 40k, and again, Alpha Legion are great for this kind of thing because they don't really obey the rules anyway. Never have and probably never will. So the idea of a psychic kill team isn't really that extreme, I don't think. Just grabbing a few, you know, mid-level psychers, or however you want to imagine them, to form part of a Terminator kill team of psychic marines seems like something the Alpha Legion would definitely probably do, and it wouldn't be too hard to justify. So I could use them to represent some Grey Knights. I've got a converted Indomitus Librarian as an Alpha Legion Librarian Terminator, which Zeta actually gifted me out of one of his sets of Leviathan, I believe. I mean, he didn't buy 2 Leviathan boxes, but he did trade out the Tyranids for a second half of the Marines. So that does. So he gifted me one of the Librarians, as he didn't really see any need to have 2, which is fair enough. I mean, it's not the way I like to do things. I definitely like to have multiple psychers. And I have to say that is the one drawback of doing Knights and Titans, is there isn't a whole lot in terms of psychic, and I like my psychic. Of course, in Legions, you do have access to the Psi Titan, the Warlord Psi Titan, which I very much intend to do. And again, I already know for Christmas that one of the gifts I'm going to get is the Titan Battle Force, which includes a Warlord Titan, and I'm going to see if I can magnetize it in such a way that I could also use it as a Psi Titan, so I can pick and choose whether I want to run it as a standard combat Warlord Titan or whether I want to run it as the Psi Titan, which will be quite cool. And I don't think it'll be too hard, because I think, based on what I've seen, there's only 2, technically 3 differences between it and the standard one, and that's that the Psi Titan comes with special Power Claw and special secondary ranged weapon and a different head, and that's pretty much it. And if that is the case, I already intended to magnetize the arms anyway, and the head, because I've also magnetized the head on my War Master, just because I could, really. I mean, I did think about painting up all 3 heads, as you do actually get full 3 heads. It's not just the faceplate, you actually get the entire head. which you can build on their own, which is pretty fantastic really in terms of options. But in the end I just decided I was going to build the one and use that. But you know, I've got the option in the future if I want to. I can change its head out. Maybe one day I might decide, you know what, it'd be really cool to build a War Master scale Psi Titan. And maybe I'll make rules for a War Master scale Psi Titan. Whether that's a thing in lore or not, I don't know, but with the way 40k works, I mean, pretty much anything is possible. So I could just decide that that's going to be a thing, so I'll make it a thing. So, we haven't spent very long on that, and we've already got all of the legs plates blocked in red, or at least the first coat of red, so it shouldn't take too long. And again, not been too careful, don't really need to be, but you know, just try not to be too overzealous as well at the same time. Right, so I know this front plate here is going to be in the bronze, so it's all the stuff in the back. I do want to try and avoid getting stuff on these panels, these bars here, if I can avoid it. Possibly there as well. That looks like a little add-on maybe that might not be in the same colour, but it does kind of blend in there, so maybe. I've got a couple of little hatches here which I might paint over again. Same with that one. I might paint that in a different colour, but for now we will just write red on top of it. Definitely don't want to get the red on those stacks there. But to be honest, I might do those in bronze anyway, so it might not matter. In fact, I probably will do those in bronze actually, so it won't matter if I get the red on them right now. So I think we're good to just hammer on some red. So off we go. Let's get that top carapace done. So let's have a go. I'm going to try and avoid getting it on those. I think I want them to be a different colour. We'll keep them grey. We'll just work down this side first. And you see that vent there, we want that to stay silver, so we are going to be a bit more precise there. I don't really want to have to go over that if I don't have to. It's not a massive issue if I do have to, but for the sake of just not going over it on quite an easy spot to avoid, it's worth not. Again, I'm not too worried about getting too deep into there because I don't really need to. The question is, do we keep those hatches a different colour look, or do we? Just checking my camera now and realise I'm not really that centred on screen, so let's move over here a little bit. Let me just double check what's going on. There we go. Might be a little bit more centred though. I think the camera's too far on one side for me. That's fine, we'll bear with for now. So let's have a look. I might keep all that in there as silver metallic, so we'll leave that. Yeah, I'm not worried about that. Sod it, let's go over it. There you go, that's going to be red. We're just going to go up to there, and we'll try and leave that bit silver, so it looks like it's been painted post build maybe. And let's just get all that red in there, all the way around the carapace. There we go. So we've done that side of the carapace pretty much. We're gonna go up the side there as well. Okay, we're going to try and avoid that sort of lip there, because I'm going to try and keep that silver. It kind of looks like that might actually be trim back there, so we're going to avoid that. I think that bit there is all trim, so that's actually going to be in bronze anyway. Yeah, so that's going to be in bronze, so don't worry about that, just that bit there. There we go. Right. I also know I'm going to have them black on these guys as well. Now I do the shoulder. I've done the shoulders on the armor goes black here. This one does have plates on the side as well, and I'm wondering whether I do them in red or black, or maybe I do red and black. Maybe we'll see. Let's get around the rest of this carapace first, though. So I might do the opposite side now, and then join it in the middle. Now, when I do the red contrast over this, I'm going to have to be quite quick and precise, which is going to make it interesting. There's a little gap there with some kind of nodule in it. I wonder if I want to I might try and keep that clear. Actually, I'll tell you what, there is one element to these plates that's going to make the contrasting element a bit easier, actually, is that there is very clear defined lines here, which gives me natural stopping points to stop painting with the contrast, because you want to paint quick with contrast, because it sort of starts to dry during application if you're not quick enough with it, and can sort of congeal and pull away from itself in an unflattering way, shall we say. And again, because I'm going to get the red in here and the black wash on this, it's really not going to matter too much if the Blood Angel red doesn't go into those gaps, because it probably won't add anything anyway. And we'll just squeeze the brush in there. There we go. So there we are. And again, we're going to try and avoid that vent, because we want that vent to stay silver. Yeah, I think that'll be alright. Perfect. So yeah, as you can see, I can just paint all the way up there, which is probably how I'll do it when I'm doing it with the contrast as well. So I might keep doing that and keep in practice with that. And this is the interesting bit, is trying to avoid getting any of the red on those big crossbars there. So if I was doing this with contrast, I'd want to start low, so I'm going to start there, drag that along there. Obviously, when I'm doing the contrast, I won't go into the grooves there, but here I'm going to, because I want to get that into the groove. And I'd want to go along that edge there, keeping that it's nice, clean silver. Okay, and just go along that there, nice and easy, keeping that nice and tidy. This is working quite nicely, and let's just try and get the brush in there without nicking that too much. Now, one thing that's quite beneficial is stuff like that as well. If you don't quite get all the way to the edge, it's not necessarily a big issue, because that just might lead it to looking like the paint's worn away a little bit around the contact point, or maybe they were welded on afterwards and the paint's been pulled away. So you can kind of get away with it in a sort of thematic way. Now what's interesting about this is that plate there looks like it's almost a bit different to the rest of the armour, so I might leave that a different colour. Oh, that's going to be the problem though, is getting in there. That's very visible, and I don't know how I feel about that. We'll see. We'll have a little swing round this way. Get the paint on there. Oh, I've gone in there a little bit. I want to avoid going in there, although to be fair, you can't really see it, to be honest. I might just run a wet damp brush along trick I've learned is get a damp brush and just rub it out, and it gets rid of the paint. Okay. Now get my brush in there. Look, I'm going to clip that no matter what I do. Which means when I'm doing the Blood Angels, it'll be a bit of a pain in the backside. But at the same time, I just probably wouldn't do it because it'll already have the Mephiston in there, and it'll already have the wash in there. So it's already going to be, and it's virtually invisible in there. So do you know what? I think we will do it. It just means that I'll do it after I've done the second red pass. I might have to do a little bit of cleanup just to block that back in red. Sorry, in silver. But that'll still work. So yeah, we're going to keep this big panel a different colour. I like the idea. We'll leave that little indent there a different colour. Now, I might do that hatch in black. Do that as a black panel instead of the red, just so that you've got a bit of visual difference. So yeah, that's fine. So we need to continue down this panel for now. Now, because I'm sort of testing things out, I've not really stuck to my idea of going along each panel, which is fine for now. This brush might be a little bit big for this job, but we'll see. Alright, I think we're okay. I've gone over a little bit, but it's fine. We'll probably get away with it. It's fine. That's really it, really. It's just deciding what I can get away with. When I do the Blood Angels, I'm probably going to use a smaller brush anyway, because I know I want to be more precise across everything, because by that point I'll have done all the trim as well. So we'll probably be a lot more targeted with our application. There we go. We're just going to slap this on the rest of it now. Just trying to avoid going into there, which is fine. Those exhausts I'm going to do in bronze, and I do change the tone of the bronze with washes based on whether it's part of the armour trim or whether it's part of the mechanical function of the vehicle. Anything that's sort of mechanically functional bronze will get an additional wash of rattling grime, just to differentiate it from the non-oil washed bronze. Oh, I've painted over that. Wasn't sure I was going to, but I'm going to now, so here we go. I've started it now, I'm going to finish it. There's a couple of little cables, tubes there. I might pick those out in bronze as well. Or do I do them as cables rather than pipes? Might have to do a little bit of a Google search for a Pypherion knight and see what colours they go with. There you go, get around that. Even with this big brush, not too bad. Now once the red is done on these things, it tends to paint up quite quickly. I'll probably get quite a ways in. Probably try and avoid painting that nodule there. That looks like it might be quite fun keep that silver. I think that's definitely going to be some kind of lens there, so we'll keep that as it is. Let's fill in that contact point there. There we go. Might pick that out as cables rather than pipework, just to make it look a bit different. Have a couple of exposed cables on the carapace, because you know that makes functional sense. but as we know with a lot of things, they're not always practically minded, we are going to paint those in red. I've done it on the other one now. It's fine, it just looks like it's part of the carapace then, rather than bolted on afterwards, or welded on afterwards. There we go. And we'll pick out the lenses in a really bright silver later anyway, so that's not a problem. So we have managed to avoid all of these quite well. Obviously we did tack that a little bit, but that's not a big issue, we can fix that later. Avoided painting those bits, that was just more out of practice really, brushwork, rather than any particular reason. Right, need to get a bit of red in there, so let's get in there, because that's quite obvious. And then flip it round and finish off top carapace. Ah, see now look, I'm looking at this, look, that looks like it's a bit of trim there. Oh, I see, look, it's all trim there, look. That's interesting. So actually I only want to paint up to there. Oh, and there, look. Okay, so there's that, the trim kind of goes up, down, all the way up there and across there, which does mean that that bit in there needs to be red. Obviously the yeah. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yep, so it's red up to there. That's all trim. Okay, cool. That makes sense. First time painting this model, so just learning where everything is and what I want to do with it. So that's the main body done. Definitely want some personal heraldry there. Oh, hang on. It's got some more crotch plates. I don't know what they're supposed to be called, but we'll call them crotch plates. I've seen that term used a lot. I'm pretty sure that's PG enough. There we go. Now he's looking nice and red. Don't know how well you can see that at the moment. Oh, it's focusing all right. There we go. It's looking okay so far. However, that big missile spot in the back of the carapace, that needs to be painted. I might build one of these with the lid down, just for fun. Yeah, so we're gonna paint that in red. That looks like it's formed as part of it. It's also got like a little pipe or a bit of cable popping out there, so hopefully I'll remember to paint that. We kind of want to keep those bits silver, so I'm going to paint around those first, so that then I can just carry on whacking the paint down. Let's paint those in. There we go. So I know some people will like to paint these very strictly following the exact styles and whatnot displayed in Games Workshop's publications and other media. So you'll meticulously decide what to paint based on how they've painted everything, and that's absolutely fair enough. I do sometimes like to reference things, as I did mention. I was going to look at an officially GW sanctified paint job for a Pypherion to decide whether those were cables or pipes, but sometimes, or most of the time really, I just make a decision based on what I want it to be, and in this case I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to decide that they're cables, because it'll just be more visually interesting. And I can paint a different colour onto them, and it won't be too laborious to do. And like this bit here, I think that's going to be a cable. I don't really need to worry about not painting over it if I'm just going to do it anyway, because it doesn't matter. There we go, that's all part of the armour. We'll pick out that lens later, so that's fine. Okay, now I could go in, if I wanted to, under here, if I can show you on camera. As just try and angle it so you can see. Ooh. There we go. Is it going to focus? Right, well. Come on. So I don't know if you can see, but here is the sort of top missile rack. So if I bring them down here, here's the missile rack. There's a bit under here, which is definitely an armour plate. I could go in and paint that red, but guess what? It's not been xenothawed, it's still black, so I'm going to keep it black. This bit at the front though, which is very visible, I will block that in quite quickly with a bit of red, because that's going to be very visible. There we go. I could try and get in there and paint all that red, but you know what? I'm just going to leave that metallic. You know, makes it stand out a bit, so that when it closes down, it all forms a nice red. But when it opens up, it shows off all the internal workings. Maybe that's how I'll think about it. Right, so we've got quite a bit done already on that one for the first coat of red, but there is a little bit more red that's got to be done. Just got to decide where it's going to go. So I'm also just having a quick peek at some of the other parts of the model to see whether I'm going to, or what colours and where I'm going to put them. I love doing cables, so I like to see some cables. Any ribbed cables I always do black, because that just seems to be quite common. I used to do them yellow actually in some places on some older kits, but I never got on well with the way the yellow dries, so I don't do that anymore. Well, the red contrast anyway. Just noticed there's a little patch there that I kind of missed, which don't matter too much, but I'm going to block it in anyway. So let's have a look then where we're at. So we've got those 4 big panels on the back there. They're going to be red. There's no two ways about that. They're going to be redded. And I can't decide what I'm going to do with the side plates here. I know that one's going to be black. I know that's going to be black for sure. Definitely going to do that black. I can't decide whether I want to do either of these in red or whether I want to do them in black as well. Like the idea being that the entire shoulder is always red, always black. Or whether it's literally just the shoulder plates and any additional plates are still red. Oh, I think black's probably the way I'm gonna go. You know, it's the weapon arm. The weapon arms have black panel plates. Yeah, I think we'll do that. I mean, I could use one of them maybe as a heraldry plate. Now we're going to put a little bit of stylized heraldry on this banner down here. I like for one of these plates to be used to show off some personal insignias and stuff like that, or just style them a bit differently. But these guys have got lots of banding and stuff on all these plates, so it doesn't really fit to have anything on those, whereas those are actually quite plain. Could put some personal heraldry on the sides there maybe. Well, we'll base them in black I think for now, and we'll decide what I do with it after that. But first, before we do that, let's get those big panels on the back protecting its I'm assuming it's power core or whatever they use on knights, generators or power source of some description. But yeah, let's just block those in. They're all going to be red. You wouldn't typically have heraldry displayed on the back, I don't think, so I'm not going to worry about putting anything on the back there. These are quite functional armour plates. suppose ideally that's what you want, is to put heraldry on superfluous armor plates, not necessarily ones that are super integral to the function of the armor. Obviously, all armor plates are pretty much there to be functional. Picking out a couple of plates to sort of add that little bit of extra personality to the knights, makes them feel a bit more like knights. So let's just get into there, trying to make sure I'm still on camera every now and then. So there we go, let's get that one in there. What I might do is I might check the russes in a minute and oh, actually no, there's no need at the moment actually. No, because I want to focus on these. Russes, basilisks. I want to focus on these because these I want to get on the table. Whereas the artillery, it'd be nice to get on the table, but I'm not really that fussed on whether I get them out anytime soon or not. I just realised that that's got all the same style of banding that all of the armour plates do, so I'm thinking that's supposed to be part of the armour as well, so we're actually going to go in there and chuck some red in there as well. There we go. That little, don't know if you can see that in there. Yep, just there is where the red is, and there's that little circle piece there which looks a little bit interesting. Might pick that out in a different metal just to make that show off a little bit. Right, so that is definitely all the red blocked in on this knight. So he is looking pretty good, I think. Now obviously I could go and do the black now, but to be honest, what I want to do really is I just want to concentrate on getting the red nice and solid. So, and now that we've got to the end of all the red panels on this guy, I think we should be more than safe to start at the beginning again and working our way back through, just to solidify that red in there a bit more. Now I've got to be honest, I have been tempted to try this without doing the second coat of red, just seeing whether the wash and the Blood Angels just finishes it off without that second coat. And it's entirely possible, potentially, that would be the case, but I just don't know, so I'm not going to risk it. I've just seen on he's got this little sort of gorget style armour here, and that's got a nice symbol on it, symbol inlaid into it. This one does not. And I'm kind of thinking that sort of gorget plate I haven't done it in red, and do you know what, I might not. I might actually do that in black there, and then this side where it's got the more stylized piece in it, what I might do is I might actually pick that out in gold maybe, or a super bright silver, just so it really stands out. I don't know whether, I almost feel like that bit in there is supposed to be red as well. Or whether that is supposed to be part of the undercarriage. Do you know what? This might be a Google. I might break my word there and actually go to have a look at what that's supposed to look like. So what I'll do is I'll let you join me on that little venture. So let's switch over to my browser. There we go. So you can see what I can see. So let's have a quick look. We're going to look for an Acastus Knight Pypherion. Now you've got the Legions one there. If we have a look in there, that does in fact look very much like that's armour is the same as this armour here, so that does look like it is the same colour. So I might have to stick some red in there, and it looks like the head is also that same colour. They've done what I've. It looks like they've done something similar to what I was talking about with the with that gorget there. Gorget there is the same colour as the rest of it, but I'm going to do it different, make it stand out. Yeah, you've got that nice uniform colour there. Oh, it looks like they've done the same as me as well. They've not actually painted the inside there, look, in the armour colour. Oh, great minds think alike. It is kind of good to have a quick look actually at, you know, what this all looks like, where they've put their different colours on. It is interesting to have a quick look. So, yeah, so, okay, we've got to get some more red in there, so we better do that. Yeah, okay, cool, I'm happy with that. So let's go back to the desk. So let's grab our red and just quickly block in all that on the inside. And again, where this banding is, it's all going to be covered in bronze anyway, so it really doesn't matter too much if we nick it. Now it looks like the red has got very saturated in the wet palette. So it's not going on very well. It's going on very, very smoothly. But it's not giving me much in terms of coverage, which is also one of the reasons I do end up doing a double coat. Because that is the problem when you start with a wet palette, or it can be a problem anyway. Keep his knight head red. Or do we fill that in? Oh no, he's got a bit of banding on his head as well, hasn't he? Yep, in we go. Right, I'm going to keep the actual face metallic, silver, or grey, whatever you want to call it. We'll just paint that bit in the top there red, and then we'll pick out the banding in a minute. There we go. Yeah, so what I try not to do is I try not to put too much red on the palette. Not too much paint on my palette at a time, because some of the moisture comes through and it really, really waters it down, and makes it difficult to use. Or it just makes it so that there's virtually no coverage and you're not really gaining anything from it, which can be a bit of a pain. Ooh, just have a look at that design there. I'm really looking at it now, and this in here, it's got the same banding as the armour, which implies to me that that should actually be coloured like the armour panels, which is interesting. And I could potentially go in and paint that red with the black on the top so that, you know, they look a bit different. Or I could be really cheeky, and to be honest, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to paint that in black, because that means that all this stuff under here, which has not really been hit by any metallics anywhere, and is going to be both literally in shadow 90% of the time, but also is in shadow in terms of the paint because it's not had any of the zenithal hit it. It means that will blend in nicely as I go around with the black. So yeah, we will paint that in black, but we'll, yeah. So I'll come back to black, because the black I'm gonna do with the Black Legion contrast paint. Now I don't typically use contrast paints directly over a lot of flat panels, but Black Legion is Black Legion, so it covers very nicely, very quickly, even over big panels, because you don't see any tide marks or anything because it's black. So it just covers beautifully well in one thick coat. Well, not too thick obviously, but one quick coat and you're done. So I quite like it for that. So that's what we're going to do. And I think that will work quite nicely. So, need a quick swig of your drink. Let's just grab one of my little armigers. My little war glaive. There we go. So, we need to try and get this guy to a similar state as him. And to be fair, just by putting the armour panels on, we're not far off already. It doesn't take too long. Although, I mean, we have been here for an hour and a half now, but obviously there was a bit of chatting, a bit of stopping and starting. It's not been a straight through paint, breakneck speed paint job. And I would imagine what will happen is once I do close down the stream, is that I will probably carry on and finish these guys off. Now, at some point in time, I will endeavour to sort of have a stream project or stream projects where I'll paint specifically models on stream so that you'll get to see the entire process start to finish, all recorded on screen, over the course of a few sessions. As it's very unlikely that I'll paint an entire model in 3 hours, ever. Can't see that happening, to be honest. But at the moment, I've got some big plans for stuff that's coming on the channel, and that means that I need some big armies and some options to put in those armies. And at the moment, based on the kits that I've purchased and built already, I currently have a reasonable size force for the Space Marines and the Auxilia. Now, the Auxilia, I will admit, isn't very large. I mean, it's probably around 1,500 points, which is okay considering some of the ways we like to play. It does mean that, you know, if I ally in some Titans and stuff, I can easily push it to, you know, 2,000 to 3,000 points. So that's fine. So I can run the Auxilia fine. I've got about 2,000 points of Astartes in the Alpha Legion. Again, with a bit of allying, can easily get that to 3,000 points. Not a problem. I have just over 2,000 points of Titans. So again, I can run a Titan Legion relatively comfortably. I mean, in theory, can I do it legally? Yes, I think I can actually with the Lupercal Light Maniple. I could actually run a Titan Legio and then use some auxiliary allies. So actually, yeah, that would work. So obviously, I'm not going to be running the Alpha Legion too much, I don't think, but our resident She-Wolf and Sisters player will be building their Night Lord's army, but that will be quite a slow build as they're just getting into the whole painting thing. They will be borrowing my Alpha Legion for the time being. But I need and really want an army of knights, because I enjoy painting the Titans so much. I figured knights probably wouldn't be far off it either in terms of enjoyment, and do you know what, I do quite enjoy it, which is unusual for me because I don't enjoy painting, but I quite like painting the knights. They're nice, they're relatively easy, and they sort of come together quite quickly and you can see the progress on them. Like, for example, I would imagine I'll get the vast majority of this done on the stream. Which means I will just be able to finish it off later today. Potentially do the other one as well. Just depends how I want to do things. I could, and to be fair, this is something I didn't think of, is I could paint this guy all the way up to the wash stage, give him the wash, and then go over to that one and do the same. And by the time that one's on the wash stage, I'll be able to come over to this one and finish him off. Now the reality is I don't think we'll get to the point where I'm finishing either of these on the stream, I don't think. Because if nothing else at the moment, I'll be honest, for anyone who's currently watching in the future, there isn't too much in terms of viewers at the moment, although I have just what's it called, refreshed my thing, and I've noticed that someone is actually in the chat. So hi to yourself who has joined me. I'm hoping my dulcet tones aren't boring you, but you know, if they're putting you to sleep, I suppose you're getting something out of this. But yes, if we had a few people in here, or even just, you know, someone for me to bounce off of, I'd be probably quite happy to sit here and paint this all day and show you start to finish how it all goes. But if I'm just going to be sat here monologuing the entire time, then I'll be honest, I will end the stream at some point and carry on my lonesome and get these all done. But you'll still be able to check them out on our socials, particularly my Instagram. It will go on straight away, and it will also be shared to the entire team, including the main channel's Instagram. So you will still get to see the final result in some close-ups, and at some point soon I've got another project to work on, which is I've just realised that I did not paint that panel in there at all. Oh, there you go. I forgot to paint that part of the panel. That's really dumb. So I'm going to have to go back over that again in a second. I should have a chat stream up there, but I'm just going to quickly check. Yeah, no, that's fine. Okay. Right, so I need a little bit more paint because I've actually gone through all the paint on my palette. That's good. So just pop a drop on. There we go. I'm not going to put too much on this time because I don't want it to water down too much. So I get nice coverage. That side's been done. So let's get this side done. I feel like I need to move my chair across a little bit so that I'm more centered. There we go. I'm still learning the process of trying to paint in view on a camera. I might need to bring that camera forward a bit, maybe, so you get a better, closer to an eye view of what I can see. I might have a play with that before the next stream, which there definitely will be another stream on next Sunday. Whether there's another one in the interim, I don't know. I don't know whether I will or not, or whether one of the team might jump on. And when I say one of the team, that will invariably be Zeta, who will definitely be the second primary streamer for the team at the moment. Mainly because, well, I'm given to believe that the common convention is to use online names when Twitch streaming. That seems to be the impression I got from Zeta last time that we streamed. So, and when I was watching his first stream, so it's hard to talk about the other two because they don't really have identifiable online personas that I can use, unlike myself and Zeta. Obviously, mine being Arcadius. I do find it a little bit odd considering that we use our real names on the YouTube channel. So I find that one a little bit peculiar, but I'll go with it. That seems to be the convention. But the other two don't really have access at the moment to the capability of streaming. At the moment. That may change in the future. They may just join us as the voices in the sky. They might join as conversationalists, which myself and Zeta did last time. So at least then it won't just be me talking into the void. But obviously, hopefully, we'll get some engagement from you guys, where I can obviously have a chat with you about what I'm doing and what's going on, and maybe discuss what's going on in the hobby, or your hobby, or Games Workshop in general, etc, etc. But we'll see. It's all just a learning curve at the moment. Bit like me learning how to paint this model, because I've never painted one before. And I'm not gonna lie, I had so much fun painting that War Master that I am definitely into painting big stompy robots now, as I've never really enjoyed painting, but for the first time since I've started Warhammer, and I started Warhammer, I think I was about 12, so that was 18 years ago I started, and I have never enjoyed painting in 18 years. And to be fair, I mean, I'm not a bad painter by any stretch, but I'm definitely not a professional. I don't enjoy it enough to be a professional, far from it. But I've finally discovered something I actually enjoy painting. Now, the other thing I do enjoy painting actually is terrain. I love painting terrain because you can just be really quick and dirty with it. I love building it as well, it's good fun. And to be fair, there might be some terrain focused streams coming up once these nights are done. So, and when I say these nights, I mean the big box of 12 other nights that I've got, which I bought for myself to get my knight army up together nice and quickly. It's quite literally a knight army in a box. I mean, it's not quite a 3,000 point army, but it's pretty close. And then on top of that, I obviously printed off the 9 armigers, and I also bought a couple of extra Pypherions, mainly because the shop I was in at the time, that's the only knight kit they had, so I just bought them. Obviously, I had to order the big Knight Battle Force box off GW, which came very quickly. I was very impressed. But we were at a local hobby store, and I was looking for knights because I wanted to start my knight army, and I wanted to get in some practice before that box turned up. It didn't actually work out that way in the end, but because they delivered it so quick. But they didn't really have much in the way of knight kits available at the time. They had quite a few of the other kits, which again is quite nice because even Games Workshop stores don't hold very many Legions kits in stock. Something I mentioned to our local guy, our local Games Workshop employee. He was absolutely phenomenal, lovely bloke. He had just started, I think, and well, I know he had just started, but he was absolutely fantastic. So can't recommend certain stores enough. I'm not going to mention where or when it was on stream, for reasons, just in case, you know. Not quite sure what the either the rules or the conventions are on mentioning real life locations, so I'm just not going to. Just to avoid any potential issues. Yeah, and they only had the one kit available, which was a box of Knight Pypherions. So I thought, oh well, I want some practice. I've got a bit of extra cash to grab an extra kit, so I bought that. Or bought this kit, which is why this one is built and ready for painting today. Although in theory, I probably could have built and prepared another unit from the big box. But what I actually ended up spending the last few days doing is building and painting up my new hobby tools or gaming tools, really, and tokens for playing the game, all themed from the custom logos and my own custom tools that I designed and 3D printed. and they are my own designs as well. So at some point in time I may release some blank versions of them online, or maybe even offer to make some more personalised ones to release to the public, because my tools are quite handy. Now I can't. I might be able to. I can't really release the tokens because I digibash them from a kit that I had already purchased. So without contacting the seller and asking them, you know, are they okay for me to release them? It might get a little bit difficult. But I made some modifications to a kit to increase the magnet size I could incorporate into the tokens, and also to basically make them a little bit simpler because they were quite complicated, and I wanted them to be quick and easy to paint, because you need a lot of tokens. I think not including the fact that I created specific wound and void shield counters out of the same kits. I think I printed and painted about 50 tokens, which doesn't include the fact that each token is 2 pieces, and one of those 2 pieces is detailed on both sides. So there was a lot of painting, and I designed some ways to make it quick and easy to paint and try and do as much of it with an airbrush as possible. But yeah, it did take two half days, so pretty much 24 hours more or less to fully paint the entire set, which isn't bad considering I painted enough tokens to cover every single unit in essentially 5,000 points worth of legions. And when I say every unit, I mean every potential unit, so not even just every that, you know, you can run Ogren in the Ogren, in sets of 2 attached to tertios, so, and you get 4 in a box, so in theory you need 2 tokens for them because you might run them in 2 lots of 2. So I printed 2 for every a token for every 2, and I have 8, so that was 4 tokens straight away, which then you double because you need both sides of it, so that's 8 pieces. And then you also need a broken token for if the unit is broken in the game, and you only ever need half of those, so that's another 50% of what you already had. Well, not strictly speaking, because you swap the dials over. It's getting very complicated now, but effectively, once you take it all down, there's quite a lot of tokens. Anyway, I painted them all. The only ones I didn't paint off, in fact, I can actually show you some examples actually while I'm talking about it, because I've got some unpainted ones here. So these, just threw them all over the table. And as you can see, these are all magnetised and ready for painting, because these are for models and units I haven't actually. I've got a spare painted one here actually. Here we go. So these are some wound counters. It's nice and obvious, wound, and then on the other side you've got your numbers. So wounds, and then this is just the little cover dial. There's no detail on that one, so you don't paint that both sides, you only paint one side of that one, which is paint both sides of that one. So, you know, I can pop that next to me knight, and I redesigned this top to be simpler to paint, but also has a little bit of detail on it, so I've got some cables and a bit of pipe on there, so that when it's sat next to the model on the table, it doesn't look totally out of place, because it's really immersion breaking for me to have dice there. And in 40k I try to hide everything as much as possible. In Legions it's a lot harder because you do need order. You need to show what orders are with the units. Now you could have a sheet off to one side with the orders on them, and then you can sort of back and forth from a table. But that's not realistically very practical. It's certainly not practical for everybody who might be much more limited on space than I am. I mean, I've got quite a large studio space to work in, so in theory I could do that. But also when we're recording, it's probably easier to actually just have the tokens on the table so you can kind of see what's going on. So I try to blend it in as much as possible, and that was my answer. Sort of this sort of little cable dial thing with a little lens on it, and that goes there. And all my other tokens are elsewhere, but I've got some spares here. So this is my custom symbol for my knight household, House Dracaran. Bonus points if you can figure out where I got that idea from. And there's the broken version as well, so it's actually got the symbol broken with some notches out of the sides as well. And then, so they're distinguishable as order tokens. These panels are slightly different to these panels. So they're just a sequence of coloured LEDs or something. And these on the other side actually have the orders on them. So starting from the bottom where my thumb is here, you've got, and going round clockwise, you've got fallback, march, charge, advance, and first fire. Alright, now at some point I'll show you a printed one, but it's on the other side of the room at the moment. But these are what I spent ages painting. I painted over 50 of these. And the idea is that obviously when the unit is fresh, you can just plonk that down, so that will sit there. So my Knight Pypherion is on first fire, and he's got his full 3 wounds. Now whether whether you just add the tokens when they take wounds is up to you. You know, if they've taken 1 damage, you might just go, okay, right, I'm going to pop that on, he's taken 1 damage, and then you can count up until it's destroyed. Or you can count down. I think these guys have 3 wounds when they start with, so you could have a token there to say that, you know, he's on 3 wounds, he's fine. Or you might just say, oh, well, when he takes 1 wound, I'm just going to mark him, he's got 2 wounds left. Whatever way you want to do it, alright? Obviously, that's just there for a quick reference. You're never really going to have it upside down. Could have it upside down if you wanted it to carry around, but again, that's immersion breaking for me. That's more just for me to know that if I've got them in a box somewhere, I can pick them out quickly. Normally I like to count down on wounds, but I am thinking I might actually do, for the first time ever, I might count up in runes in Legions. This one here, though, obviously denotes that it's on first fire. But during the game, obviously, you have to hide these at the start of the battle round. That's not too... I don't find that particularly immersion breaking, because you can obviously... you flip them over very quickly in the game. So that's just there to be a very cool stylized... This is for that one. So there you go. But obviously, if the unit is broken, okay, you actually, in Legions, you lose access to a couple of the orders. So you've got the 5 orders there. Technically, you've only got 4. That 5th one, the fallback, it works differently. But if your unit is broken, you lose access to the first fire and the march orders. So on this token here, you should be able to see if I can get it to show up. You can kind of see there that you've only got the 3 orders there, the 2 that you can assign on the fallback, the other 2 are broken, okay, literally broken, you can't use them. So you can see on there the broken dial. So you just take that same topper from the unbroken one and whack it on top. And then when you're making your order selections, you can be reminded instantly, okay, cool, I can't take that option. So it makes it nice and easy. Alright. And if you ever need to check, obviously mid-game, you know, okay, so I need to take a test on that one. Cool. Is that one broken? Oh, yes, he is. Okay. Nice and easy. So that's the tokens. And there's more to it as well. I've got a little game tracker that tracks your victory points, and I've got little measuring sticks as well, which are all stylized. I very much like to use I like to use measuring sticks where possible, rather than tape measures, because tape measures can have a tendency to flop around or fall over or get flinged back on yourself. I'm about to sneeze, I think. Oh. Nope, it's there, but it don't want to come out. Hopefully that will go away. got distracted by the sneeze. Oh yes, yeah, no, I prefer to use measuring sticks rather than take measures for reasons of reasons of concern about keeping my models from getting destroyed by a errant whipping tape measure, which you can't always avoid because sometimes the measurements you need to make are going to be, you know, off the table or have to go round weird ways, or you know, you've got a 45-inch gun or 45-inch range weapon that needs to target something. You're going to be using a tape measure for that, because that's just impractical to pull out a 45-inch ruler. I suppose you could, but not very practical. But for anything smaller, I do like, particularly for movement as well, to actually have little sticks you can place on the table and measure much more accurately where something can move. So I've got these little measuring sticks that are designed to sort of work together to measure out your movement. And obviously that gives me an opportunity then to put some cool heraldry and stuff on them, make them look fancy. Right, we've gone through all the leg panels again, so they're all readied up. So we're now going to move on to the main carapace. Now I'm going to try and follow the method I want to use when I put the contrast down. When I do the contrast, I'm going to want to start on panel 1 and work my way across. Let's just work my way across the panel, trying to keep an even flow to make sure that when the eventual contrast goes down, we don't lose or allow it to dry out on the model, causing rifts and tide marks and stuff like that, or brush strokes. We don't want that. And also I will use a slightly thinner brush for that process as well. This one's quite nice just to get the big blocky bits done. Just being a little bit more careful as I go around those bits, because I want to keep them silver. I don't want to have to repaint stuff if I don't have to. If I know I'm going over it anyway, different process entirely. But if I don't intend to repaint it as a different colour, then ideally I won't paint over it at all. So that I know I'm going to paint over, so that's fine. Again, those cables I'm going to paint over in a different colour, but you know, it's not too much effort for me to skim round them, so I'll skim round them. Okay, keep it inside that panel. Keep it inside. I'm going to try and avoid painting that because I want to keep that silver. This bit is where the contrast will be difficult. Now thankfully there is a nice join, so that should be okay to leave that for a second on a contrast run. But this is where the contrast will get difficult. So I'm going to have to try and work with it quite quickly. Try and leave it at the bridge there, because it's not so obvious on corners and stuff like that. So that's where I'm going to have to be a bit clever with the application. But it looks like we're doing alright. I think this will work. I think it'll work quite well. Let's just get in back there, behind that bar. Again, we're trying to avoid the bar, because I don't really want to have to paint over it. For the sake of a little bit of finesse. Save myself some effort in the future. There we go. I think this will work. I think we'll be able to get through this with a contrast run relatively easily. Ideally, we're going to quickly dash a bit in there. Trying to avoid going over that edge just so we can keep the flow. Like I said, I'm not too worried about what's going on in there. Obviously, if we're doing the contrast bit, we won't bother going into here, but we're not doing the contrast at the moment, so we are just going to block that in with a bit more red. And then we're just going to carry on down this way, painting that panel up, avoiding that vent there, because we want that vent to stay that colour. And that will be a bit of a pain to paint back over. Vents and stuff are always a bit of a pain if the coverage isn't great on the metallic, because you don't want to overdo it on the thickness, which means it's not very good for a lazy painter like me if you have to redo it. There we go, we're getting there. We're almost done with all this red for the time being. Very nearly done. There we go. Right, that's half the top done. Now this is where it gets a little bit more complex. So we know we've got to get some red into there, pull it back across here, go over the top and round. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to block in that little bit there and get that done. I'm just going to paint that in there. That's done. I'll do the same on the other side. Just paint that in there. Again, I don't need to be super strict on this one. It's all fine. Okay, so what I want to try and do is try and get in there and go forward. So we're going to just block that in there. Again, now I probably won't bother putting the contrast in there because it's going to be dark and hard to see in there anyway. So I probably wouldn't bother there. And I really don't want to knock it. And I don't want to sort of knock the banding plate on that shoulder piece, because that's going to be coloured in the bronze very soon, which means it'll already be shaded and everything, so I really don't want to mess with it. So it's all about picking your battles and what's worth doing and what's not. And I can't imagine that will be worth doing. So throw it along the same way I would if, or when I get round to the contrast stage. And it's all going rather smoothly. So I'm quite happy with this. The joy of painting a knight. Just need to go over that bit there. Now this is where it would be a little bit more tenuous because I don't want to touch the other panel with the red, which I've managed to get away with actually very quickly with that big brush as well. When I'm doing that with a smaller, more refined brush, I'll be able to do that quite quickly and quite easily as well. So that's good. We're having a lot of success today. It's almost like the model was well designed for painting. Well done, GW, for making my life easy. Thank you very much. It's what I want to see. And then we just squeeze the brush in there a little bit. Get it down as far as we can without knocking any of the trims. And then we will obviously paint the extra in there, because we would with this one. But the reality is, when I come to doing the contrast bit, I won't bother doing it at the end there. Well, there we go, that's almost done. We've almost got the red done. Now, it has taken nearly 2 hours to get all the red done on this one, which is quite a while, I will say. But, you know, it does take a little bit of time to get these jobs done right sometimes. I've just got to do the red on the top there and on those back panels there. I do just need to go back over that bit there. Did I forget to do crotch plate? I don't think I did, but that doesn't look like it's got much coverage on it. Let's just go back over that quickly. And quickly just go back over that leg panel in case I do the cardinal sin of forgetting it a second time, which would be very sad. There we go. And that's all blocked in. Beautiful. Right, let's finish this red off. So, again, like last time, I want to go around those bits that I don't want to clip. And we'll do that first so that we can just hammer on the rest of it. And just do a big straight stroke across there. Imagining this was a contrast as well. This is where it gets interesting. Because I would want to go back there now, because that's where it's going to be starting to dry off. And then drag it all along here. That should all be painted in there. And then we're going to want to come down. Nice straight line. Finish off that panel. Again, following the panel system. That's one panel done, if that was done in contrast. And with this panel, it's going to be really quick and easy because I'm not worried about going over stuff this time. We're just slapping it all over that panel. In hopefully a relatively smooth coat. Slapping it on all the way across. Bit more paint there. There we go. Perfect. And just across the front there. And there we go. Easy. There we go. That is looking beautiful and red. So, let's just quickly do those panels at the back, block them in, and that is us done with Mephiston red. So I don't think we'll be coming back to it again, unless I decide to put any on the banner, or if I decide to mark up one of the panels with some personal heraldry, I might decide to do some more red. But it's certainly going to be the red done for the majority. There we go. Get these big plates done. In terms of scale, this thing is actually pretty huge. This thing is not much smaller than the Warhound Titan. And I know in lore, these Acastus aren't commonly misidentified as Titans, and it's easy to see why, because these are very close in terms of size to a Warhound Titan. They are not. There's not much in it. The Warhound is bigger, but it's very close. And it'll be very interesting to see if, with the Heresy Rangers going into plastic at GW, whether this big boy is ever going to get a plastic kit. Because they've done this, they've done the Cerastus now. In fact, I believe they've done the Castigator, the Acheron, and the Lancer all in plastic. Which I think, if I'm recalling correctly, is the biggest plastic kit Games Workshop makes. I know the Stomper was. I don't know if the Stomper still is. But if the Stomper is still the biggest, then I can't imagine it must be much smaller than one of these things. If not a similar size. If it's not as big as the Cerastus, and the Cerastus is now the largest, there's not a huge amount in it between these guys and the Cerastus. I mean, they're a little bit bigger, like bulkier certainly. So it'll be interesting to see if they do eventually make this in a plastic kit. It wouldn't be far off the same scale to start thinking about plastic Warhounds. 28mm plastic warhounds. That could be quite interesting. Just have a quick swig. Right, so I'm happy all the red panels are done. So I think the next objective is to get those black panels in. Black panels are going to be nice and easy. Like I said, it's going to be a quick go over with some black Legion contrast. Excuse me while I just shake up my pot. Here we go. So let's get this on. So, literally only got a couple of armour panels. Going to quickly block in that face plate or gorget, and that's it, I think, if I remember right. We shall see in a second whether I'm wrong or not. Well, actually, having said that, I do like to put Black Legion on the gun casings of some stuff, and I've got a couple of las cannons in there, and there's just that little bit at the end there that I tend to do in black. And I normally do these bits back here in black as well, so I might try and block them in as well while I'm at it. So I'm going to probably let's do these little bits in here. Let's do the gorget first. Let's paint that in. Like I said, I might do that side in a gold maybe, or bright silver in a minute, but I'm just going to block it in black for now, just so that you can see the detail on it. That's how I'm going to keep black. Yeah, I think that's quite cool. Gives it a little bit of a tonal difference rather than just being more red. And we'll do that door hatch in black as well, just to make that look a bit different. Can we avoid the view import? I think we might be able to. We'll keep the surrounding metallic metal as well, or metallic. We'll keep it in silver because it's a functional extension. There we go. It's not got the same sort of styling as the rest of the armour panels. It's like all these sort of armour panels have either got banding around them or they've got a lot of rivets in them. Whereas this piece almost looks like it's been welded onto the armour plate post-production, maybe. I don't know. Actually, you could just paint it in red, I suppose. But it does give it a bit more variety. What do you think? Do I go back in and paint that red? Or do I keep it metallic? Try to decide. Because it doesn't have any rivets on the extreme, and it breaks the rivet lines here. No, I feel like that's been almost welded on afterwards. I mean, we could Google it. We could check the website again, but this is going to be one of those occasions where I'm just going to make the decision, I think, and I like the idea that it's separate, and it just adds a bit of colour difference as well. I was tempted to paint these hatches on the top of the carapace as a different colour as well, but that might just be a step further than I really fancied going. I mean, I'm going to have to put a bit of silver on them anyway because they've got some little hatches on them, little handles on them, so I'll probably paint those back in silver. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of silver touch-ups, but that's unavoidable. It's always unavoidable. While I've got the black out as well, I'll go around and do all these black cables as well. So let's go. Let's paint these. Let's paint these big shoulder pads in. Again, I'm not worried really about going over the banding. So, just as a bit of brush control practice, I try not to go over all of it, but I'm not too fussed when I do. It's also nice to sort of experiment with the way the brush reacts to moving parallel to the plate. Because what you can do is you can actually use the brush, if if you run in parallel to sort of move into those little gaps, which I don't know if you can see there. As I was pushing it parallel to the plate, it kind of moved into the little joint or gap in the banding. It just kind of naturally moves in that way. The bristles just conform to the shape, which can be quite handy if you're trying to do something. Yeah, if you're trying to colour in the armour panels after doing all the banding. I know some people like to do models with banding. They like to spray it all up in the banding colour and then paint it all afterwards. I kind of get it. I mean, you could potentially do that. I mean, certainly with this I wouldn't bother, because all the armour panels are on and I already know the entire undersuit is, the vast majority of it is going to be grey metal, and I also know that the banding on mine is going to be bronze, so it wouldn't really work unless I figured out a way of building this thing without putting all the armour panels on, which again possibly could have done, but I also know that I'm quite happy and comfortable painting these guys fully built, so didn't bother. So yeah, I'm quite happy. So yeah, I do tend to prefer painting the panel and then quick and dirty, and then doing the fine work on the banding, because I just tend to find the bandings quite easy to do. Because even on my Titans, I spray paint the panels in their base colours. So the Titans, I do build those in separate pieces, with the armour plates not in place. And I tend to find that works quite well. But with these guys, I just don't think it's worth it. Not because of the scale and the size, and trying to get those armour panels back on post build, and trying not to chip paints and stuff like that, or trying to get super glue in places I don't want it, or having to go through and find all the contact points and scrape the paint away so that I can plastic glue it if that's the way I want to do it. It just seems like you're trading all the effort in at one place to replace it in another. So I don't really see that there's you gain much from that, whereas I can just glue it on with plastic glue right now at this stage, get it nice and bonded, and just paint in those panels and the banding in situ without an issue. Whereas Titans, there's nice big contact points, so it's not too hard to get your super glue where you want it to go, and it's not too hard overall to get everything to work. And I do a lot of magnetising on the Titans as well. Like almost all the guns, the arms, even the hip joints are all magnetised, so I can take it apart for transport if I need to. But also in case I've got a game where I want to visually represent its destruction, or if I want to use it as a bit of terrain, maybe I can just park it on the table with some smoke billowing out of it or something. Or have it as being in disrepair, maybe use it as an objective marker for a game or something. I've done that with all my Titans. All the Warhounds all come apart. And obviously with something like the Warhounds as well, I mean, they got so many weapon choices, you'd almost be a fool not to magnetise the arms. Otherwise, if you're not going for a WYSIWYG, which we try to for as best we can, certainly for big things. I mean, there are some instances where it's just not worth it, where it's too difficult. Like with these guys, you can have. So you've obviously got these big Magna las cannons, but then you've got these two little las cannons inside the sort of chassis. Now they can be las cannons or auto cannons, and I'll be honest with you, the way they're built into the carapace, magnetising it would be very painstaking process, and I just don't see it being worthwhile. Especially as, in all reality, especially with the way Legion's point system works, which, you know, might change in time, but, you know, I'll figure that issue out closer to the time if that is the case. This thing is a tank killer or a Titan killer or a Knight killer. I don't really care about it taking on light vehicles or anything less than a vehicle, so I can't see myself ever really wanting the auto cannons, so I just stuck the las cannons in and called it quits. The other piece that you potentially could make, so these guns don't change. This is a Knight Pypherion. That means it uses those guns. So yeah, and there is a version of this thing. I believe there is a version of this with conversion beamers or something like that. But it's an entirely different Knight anyway. It's even got different armor plating and stuff like that. It's a Mechanica style Knight. This is the only version of the Acastus, I think, for this particular chassis and build. So there aren't weapon options for it. It's just got these big las cannons. So yeah, they just got glued on, no issues, no magnets. So this Knight is completely magnet free. It's one of my few models that doesn't have any magnets in. Certainly any model of this sort of size anyway. Obviously the tiny ones don't have magnets in. You do have options for missile pods on this thing. Helios missiles and something else missile that I can't remember. The way this is put together is literally just that little bit of plate right there that changes, and all it is instead of having what I think there's 5 missiles there, instead it has like a series of really tiny ones. You're not gonna know. Generally speaking, you'll probably equip them all with the same type of missile system anyway, so I'll just say at the beginning of the game they're equipped with this missile. Done. Rather than saying, oh well, this one's got the teeny tiny missiles and this one's got this one. I don't see the point. Also, I really didn't fancy trying to paint really tiny missiles, so I went for the larger Helios missiles. But if I want them to have the other one, then I'll just say at the beginning of the game they got the other missiles, and I don't think anyone in the team's going to be bothered, and I'm pretty sure 90% of the wargaming community would not give monkeys either. So we're all good. Right, so that's all the black panels done. Now I did want to add in a bit of black to the las cannons, so let's just block that in there. I want to keep that little bit of the barrel black, silver, but I want to keep the rest in black because I like some consistency, and I do like to put my gun casings in black. So, and this is the style I've gone for with the las cannons. Is that little bit of exposed barrel is metallic, but then the rest of it is blacked out to show that it's encased in some kind of polymer. Need a bit more black to run out. And then that little gun muzzle at the front, I just decided it needed to be a different colour, so it's black to match the rest of the gun casings. But that exposed bit of barrel and banding can stay metallic, so that works for me. I mean, all this underside's barely caught any paint because it's mostly kept the zenithal there. Now with these big Titan guns, I don't tend to find that they tend to have any weapon casings on them, and very much like the Titans, this thing is, well, just shy of Titan class in its scale, so I'm not envisioning it really having much in the way of casings, although he says that having just remembered that this stuff I'm going to do in black, wasn't I? So let's do that as well. As that seems to be similarly armoured. That seems to be the theme with the Titans, is their guns don't really have casings, but most of them do seem to have armour plates on them. And so I haven't bothered doing any sort of black casings on the guns. It's mostly metallics, apart from where they have their dedicated armour panels. There we go, block that in black, keep that bit silver because that kind of makes sense. So all of this will probably stay metallic. It's not really going to have a casing on it. I'm going to do the same on this side. Let's quickly go over that. That was quite a bead of contrast there. Just get up into there because we're going to put that as banding anyway, so I don't mind getting the black on that. Trying to keep the internal workings grey though, because that's the idea. There we go, that looks more consistent. So I'll mix these up with some different, probably mix the guns up with a few extra bits of metallic colours, and by that I pretty much mean I'm going to whack some ruined or brass on it, wash it all, and then probably wash it again in a couple of different washes to sort of change the tone of the bronze so that you can see its different components compared to the banding on the armour. So just checking to see if there's much more to do here. Now there is, but obviously we've got all these ribbed cables that I want to do in black. So we've got some ribbed cables down here, as well as all these ribbed cables on the guns. This has a lot of ribbed cables on it. Thankfully Black Legion covers very well. So let's just go through and paint up all of those cables. Shouldn't take too long. And these ones you can almost paint in one stroke across all three. And again, relying on that, the magic of the Zenithal, I'd imagine that there's almost no paint on the inside of these, so I don't really have to worry about trying to get inside there. There we go. That's one bank of black cables done already. Nice and easy. Really like that. Do the others at the bottom. Now this is all greyed. Oh, it's all still mostly black, so we'll just start there. Paint our way up. Do all three in one go. Just have a quick turn just to make sure that we get it all. And it's only the end ones really that I need to quickly double check that it's all the way around. There we go. So that's one gun almost done. We've got that big ribbed cable there. So let's just get into there. And paint that up. There we go. And that's good. Okay, so that's all the black done on that gun already. Just need to do the same on that one. We'll just start with this bit here, as that's where I'm facing currently anyway. We're gonna move up here. Here we go, there we are. All looking good. And then we just got the little side cables. Okay, most of that's still black. That's not actually taking any silver, so that's fine. Love the way the Zenithal just makes my life so much easier, because there's just some things I don't need to worry about painting. Okay, almost done with the blacks. As I said, this bit is normally the quick and easiest bit. And just double check, yeah, that looks fine. Now we just got the cables at the very base of the knight. This is where it gets a little bit trickier because of the way it's all positioned, but I think we'll be okay. Because again, the zenith all-in has done us a bit of a favour there by stopping it from getting to the real recesses that the brush can't get to. And contrasts as well are quite good for sort of moving naturally around to find those little bits and joints and stuff, so we don't have to worry too much. There we go. Cables are almost done. Last one. And there we go. Check the underside. Yeah, that did catch a bit of metallic, so I do need to paint that in. There we go. Right, so that is all the blacks done. That's the red done to this point. So now, the next stage for me is going to be enhancing all the metallics. Which basically means going back over anything that I need to go over in silver, which in this case isn't very much at all because we've managed to miss a lot of it, which is great. So I just need to block that bit there back in silver, pop a little bit of silver onto these hatches, just to make, just on the handles, so that, you know, they look obviously like handles. I could potentially block that the whole hatch in silver. So again, it kind of breaks up the look of the armor panels, maybe. But I'm not really feeling it. I feel like they probably would still be red. They'd still be painted the same. This one's a little bit different, but you know, that's for reasons. Mainly the reason being I want it that way. Simple as. And what I'm also going to do is I'm also going to paint these little bits in metal as well. So I'm actually going to paint these up as a bit of derelict rhino and that little dead marine there. And I've decided that they're going to be unfortunate members of the Alpha Legion. Because why not? Why not have my own... just a hint of the fact that, you know, although House Dracarin does fight alongside the Alpha Legion quite a lot, you know, maybe sometimes they don't. That is always a risk when you're siding with the Alpha Legion. Sometimes they are against you, sometimes not. You know, maybe he's just stomping over and he's just happened to walk across a fallen ally. Or a hint that, you know, maybe they're not always allies. Who knows? Okay, so how are we doing for time? We are at 4:30. Okay, so we probably will end the stream in about half an hour. It's a good 3 hours. So that's probably where we will leave it in a minute. In about 30 minutes. So I just got to decide what we're going to do first. Now again, I'm concentrating on these. I'm not going back over to the basilisk at the moment. Well, I mean, I'm not specifically going to go back and paint them, but let's just have a quick look-see at how they are looking. So that's what they look like now that the contrast has dried. That's showing a bit blurry actually. Let's take that away because that's reflecting. So there we go. Here's me basilisks. It's looking alright. Now, these may or may not there's a good chance they will be on the next stream, because I'm concentrating very heavily on the knights at the moment, so these might feature in next week's stream, depending on how quickly I paint up the rest of the knights, because I've got another 12 of these to do, and if I can get these 2 done today, I'll be laughing. The probability of me getting them both done today is probably not that high, but it's possible. So these guys will probably feature in some way, potentially on Sunday. It just very much depends on how quickly I paint the rest of my knights up. If I can paint up what effectively is going to be about 3,000-ish points of knights in a week, I'll be very impressed. Honestly, that is kind of my goal. I kind of want to get them all done by next weekend. So it might be a case of I'm painting them up and maybe some terrain next weekend. Or I might be, finishing off some knights next weekend as well. But what I'll try and do is I'll try not to. The problem is I might still be painting Pypherions by that point, because I'll be doing the 2 Pypherions in that box last, because I will have these 2 done. So you might be seeing a double take, but it's fine. You're also here for well, I'm hoping you're also partly here for the. To be honest, mostly here to listen to me ramble. Although, feel free to ramble with me. That's kind of the idea. But currently, if you're watching this video, I'm sure you're just here for the ramble rather than the paint, because to be fair, the painting's not the aim or the main goal of my stream, certainly. Right. So let's go and fix some silvers in, shall we? So let's go grab some lead belcher. I've just got to decide, do I want to do that little bit in gold there or bright silver? I feel like a bright will gold show up very well in there? Will bright silver show up very well in there? Who knows? I don't want to keep it black because it's got a nice little bit of detail in it which won't show up very well with the black, and I kind of want it to show up. Just a little drop of metallic. Swap the lids out from my paint pots. So let's go fix up some silver. Still using this same brush. Just gonna. Ooh, is this brush going to be the right job? Tool for the job. Yeah, I think I can get away with it. There we go. Just leaning in a little bit and being very careful. And there we go. Tidied that up nicely. Perfect. Right. I'm going to swap brushes now because I've got to do those little hatches. I don't think there's any other metallics I've got to tidy up, to be honest. No. No, there's no. We've done a really good job of getting that all in without having to repaint anything, which is quite nice. We're going to take this very fine brush and just go in and pick out some bits. I do want to quickly just dab a little on there. And on here, just pick out those hatch handles. I keep looking at those hatches feeling like I want to paint them different colour. I don't often paint patches in different colours. Like I've done that one a different colour. But that's just because it kind of stands out a little bit. Whereas those kind of blended into the characters. Nope, I'm going to leave it. Once the wash goes on, it will look fine. This is always the problem. Always the problem I find. You're looking at it and looking at it, it still doesn't look right. It doesn't look right until the wash goes on. That is always the way. Even if it's not the end wash, that first wash just changes everything. Right, I'm just going to grab a nice big flat brush this time. Just to quickly skim over all of these bits and give them a bit of metallic. This is just going to be a very quick brush because I don't mind if a little bit of black shows through, because this is all going to get covered in Achillean green later anyway from the Alpha Legion corpses and derelicts. Same with this guy down here. Just give it a quick old, so otherwise the Achillean green won't show up very well if I leave it at that very, very dark glancing hit that it got from the metallic when I was spraying up the night. Whereas you want the Achillean green to show up. That needs to be base coated in some rubble colours. So let's do that as well while I'm at it, because otherwise I'll forget, and I want to wash that in black as well. And to be fair, that's pretty much all the touching up done with silver anyway. In fact, that is all the touch ups done with silver. And I'll probably paint that little pipe there in bronze anyway, so that's fine. So that's my silver's done. That was nice and quick, nice and easy. Let's grab me Dawnstone. That's what I like to use for me rubble piles. Just slap that all over. It's going to get washed in a minute, and then once all my texturing and stuff goes on, it just kind of gets hidden away. So you don't need to be overly clever with it. Dropper bottles do on occasion seem to get a little bit stuck, so got my paper clip. I'm just gonna clear that nozzle out. Don't need very much of this, I need a dribble. Still not quite there. Just a little drop. Might need a bit more than that a sec, but it's fine. So let's just block that in quickly. Now, because this has got a metal base coat, because it's definitely got hit by the metallic, I might have to go over that again. That's why I'm doing it now, so that what can happen is, well, after I've gone through and done all the bronze bits, what I can do then is I can come back over this afterwards with a second coat of Dawnstone, just to really make sure it's the right colour, make sure there's none of that metallic showing through before it gets washed. So there we go, that's that done. Yep, that'll definitely need a quick second coat, that's fine. Just trying to be as efficient as possible with the colour placement, really. Right, so the next stage is going to be much more fiddly, because we're not just slapping down a colour anymore. We're actually going to be picking things out, but not only are we picking things out, we're also going through and doing all the banding as well, which is where things get very more difficult, shall we say, because I've got to catch all of those bits of banding without hitting my my panels. It shouldn't be too difficult, but the other thing is it's also going over all of the edges of the plates as well. Again, I'm only going to do the top edges, no need to go into the bottom edges because they won't have any paint on them anyway, they'll be black, so that's fine. Some of these higher ones though, probably going to have to go around all of that. Okay, so we've got quite a bit to do in terms of bronzing this thing up. Right, yep, there's going to be a lot of bronze going on here, and I'm probably going to be swapping between brushes a lot here, because I'm going to be wanting finer brushes and thicker brushes depending on what part I'm on. So like this big band here, I'm probably going to use a bigger, chunkier brush, same with the inside. And this big plate in the front. But all these little bands I'm going to be doing with a much thinner brush. So I'm going to be dancing between brushes a little bit at this point. Once all the banding's done, I then need to go through and just jazz up all the metallics a little bit. And that's literally just the case normally of just finding little details that I like the look of and just whacking a different colour on it. Again, I normally just put the bronze on and then just do it. After the wash has gone on, I just then wash them over again with a different wash, normally rattling grime or basilicum grey, just to shift the tones. So I'm not messing around with many different colours. It's quite quick and easy, really. So for example, just looking at it front on, there's not actually a whole lot of exposed metallics from here. There's not a lot. So if I just grab this brush, what I'm looking at is anything that might just add a little bit of visual interest. Now, I know that on all of my Knights and Titans, I tend to do all the pistons in bronze. So there's a little bit of piston showing there and there. And then I'll probably do these sort of big pistony leg, foot things. I'll probably do them in bronze as well. So this is a really obvious case of where I want to make sure that it doesn't look the same as the banding, because they're next to each other. So once all this has been washed over, the the Nolnor over the banding is fine for what I want. But then this bit here on the foot plate, that I'll actually do a second wash, probably a rattling grime over that, just so that it pushes it into a different tone and makes it stand out a bit. So that's all fine. So it's literally from the front, pretty much the only bit of bronze I'm going to add on is just there. Just concentrating on the legs at the moment. Again, they're so dark in there, I probably won't even bother trying to paint those, so I'll only paint them from the front, not the back. There's a little bit of piston showing here, so I'll probably chuck a little bit of silver in there, just to a little bit of bronze in there to show that they're part of the pistons. Obviously more pistons down here. And to be honest, I think that'll be all I do on the legs. They're going to look alright anyway. There's a couple of cables in there to add a bit of colour, and the big banner as well, so they'll look alright with very little work. I'm probably going to squeeze my brush in there and paint that little cog style symbol in bronze, maybe the entire circle in bronze, because that will look a bit nicer. I'm going to try and leave that bit silver to go with the rest of the bronze there. Again, these are all going to be bronzed up, but these stacks here I'm going to actually paint. I'll put the second wash over on these in rattling grime, but leave the actual armour here just with the Nuln Oil. So again, not a whole lot of bronze to do on the main body of the knight, really, to be honest. It's predominantly the armour panels and the guns. So this is the guns are the really important one, because they need to look a bit visually interesting. So what I'll probably do is these sort of big I don't know what they're meant to be, some kind of power bank or radiator maybe. I think I'll do them in bronze. I think they'll look quite cool in bronze, so I'll bronze them up so that the back's got a bit of a different colour on it, and I'll leave the rest as it is. I don't feel like I need to change any of that. I mean, I could paint these things up on the back, these little nodules, as maybe like power indicator diodes, maybe. So which might be quite cool. You can kind of see, you know, how much power, what power levels in each of the gun, maybe. I don't know. It's probably not what that's for at all. It's probably just a bit of texture for some reason, just to make so it's not a flat panel. Something to think about. Might do that, might not. That's all fine there, and then this bit here, the barrel, that's where I want something a bit more colour. So I'm probably going to leave the majority of this silver so that it bounces off the banding. But then these front bits here, where the main energy source of the plasma, this massive lascan is coming out, I'm going to paint these in a similar way I would to flamers or melter guns. I'm going to paint them in bronze, and then I'm going to whack over basilicon grey over the top, which gives it a really dark colour. Really knocks it down. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for them. That's probably what I'm going to do. So, yes, and I've still got to decide what I'm going to do with that gorget plate there. See, this is why this one's going to take a lot longer to do, because I'm making decisions and I'm deciding what I want to do. That one will probably go a bit quicker, because I'll know what I'm doing then. I can just start whacking stuff on. But this one's taking a little bit more thinking, because I'm deciding where everything's going to go as I paint, which is fine. It just makes it interesting. Right. Well, I always like to start with the hardest part first. Don't know why. Well, I do know why. In my head, that just means that once the hardest part's done, then it's done. I don't have to do it again. Whereas if I do the easy stuff first, I know I'm then building towards the harder stuff, which I prefer to get the harder bit done and out of the way. So let's crack on. Well, we've got a little bit of time left. What I'll try and do maybe is try and get the banding done on a couple of the armor panels on the legs, maybe, so you can kind of see where it's going to go before we finish the stream today. So let's just grab. I'm just going to grab a tiny bit of bronze because, one, I'm not sure how far I'm going to get before we close the stream off. And when we close the stream off, I will probably take a little break. For me, the most annoying part of this model is going to be the banding on these internal plates here. So I'm going to get that done first. So let's go. Grab a little bit of bronze. I've got a really thin brush here because there's going to be some detail work. So I'm going to do the edging first. Like I said, on these foot plates, I'm probably not going to bother doing the edging below because that'll be in shadow. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking with it. If you don't like it, well, not much you can do about it. It's my model. And you know, it should always be your model, your rules. Well, not unless it's game terms, I suppose. Right, let's just try and do that symbol first. Just very lightly touching the paint down. And just feeling it out, really. There we go. Now obviously I will have to flip this model over in a minute to do the back of this panel because of its position, but I won't do that for now. I'll just do the front because I can come back to the other side of it when I move around, or as I move around to the other panels. And ideally I'd like to get the front of it done so that you can kind of see what it looks like before the end, or at least get a sense of where it's going before the end. Like I said, I will, once these are done, they will go up on social media, so do feel free to check out my Instagram account or the channel's Instagram account. It'll appear on both. If you're not already on them, then please do follow them. And if you fancy seeing the team talk and chat about random stuff, don't forget our YouTube channel and our podcasts are all live. Go check them out. If you enjoy, please do like, subscribe and share it as far and wide as possible. the more people we get involved, the more we can start committing to these projects. And we've got lots of plans and projects to do, and hopefully we'll keep yourselves and us entertained for years to come. So let's just get the edging done on the banding first. You're definitely not going to be able to see what I'm doing there, that's for sure. You might be able to see what I'm doing there. I could be really fussy and try and get me brush in there and do the back of that, but to be honest, never going to see it, don't care. Because even when I pick this model up and eye it up, I'm still not going to, you know, be tilting my head in to look inside the back of that panel. So, just not going to worry about it. Painting should be a fun experience, and if you don't enjoy something, don't do it. Simple as that. Well, unless you enjoy the end result, I suppose. Because if I didn't do something, if I didn't do it just because I didn't enjoy it, I suppose I'd have never painted any models at all. Because I don't really, before I started painting these guys, I didn't really enjoy painting. So I'd have a very grey plastic focused hobby. So you can find ways of making things entertaining for yourself. Oh, I think we've been on stream long enough that it sounds like my 3D printer's just finished its print, which is, I'm not gonna lie, it's another set of armatures. Because I built and painted up 9 Warglaive armatures, and I decided, because the file I've got is, I mentioned this last time, the Helverin loadout with the autocannons. The autocannons it comes with are very thin and flimsy, and I printed a couple off. And although I use quite a nice resin that's quite sturdy, I just can't see them surviving very long. With the best will in the world, no matter how careful you are, they're gonna break. And I don't really want to go to the effort of building and painting something that's gonna break so easily. Again, some of the risks you take with resin over plastics. But obviously there's not a plastic alternative, so might as well use a resin I can work with and is infinitely cheaper than fine cast. Not that I'm banging on about that again. But what I did, because I'm reasonably good at a little bit of 3D modelling, I'm certainly pretty good at, you know, modifying stuff. I just went in, grabbed the file, chucked it into Blender and modified the file to expand the cannons out in diameter to make them quite a bit thicker, and reduced the and made sure that they were roughly the sort of right length without, you know, losing too much of the believability of the weapon. And to be honest, the 3D render still looked pretty good for a believable Helverin autocannon. So hopefully the prints I've just tried out will prove me right. So I've printed off a couple of bodies and some test arms, and I'll give them a clean off and give them a little build and try and see how they look, see whether they look suitable, and if they do, going to print off 9 of them so that I've got 9 Helverins and 9 Warglaves. Because, you know, symmetry. Symmetry's nice. And, you know, it's just more points of knights that I can chuck on a table for fun. I'm not going to lie, part of it was the fact that I know I want my knights to be my main army, and with everything I know that's on the way, as well as what I currently have, I would have had almost exactly the same amount of points of knights as I would have titans. Well, in fact, the titans were just edging out ahead. I didn't really want the titans to outdo my knights, so instead of running out and trying to buy more plastic kits of knights, which, you know, could have done, I suppose, I opted for the sensible option of just printing off some more armigers with the alternative loadout that I didn't print the first time, so that I've got an equal number of each, and brings my points up to a more comfortable lead, shall we say, above the titans. So House Dracaran will definitely be the preeminent of the armies. So yeah, I've got House Dracaran as the main army, the primary force in Legions terms. They'll be backed up by the Pypherion Auxilia, which is the auxiliary forces named after the world of Pypherion, which is also the homeworld of the Dracaran Night House. And they are basically they're a militia and support force that accompanies House Dracaran on campaign, and they basically provide the menial labour that the more majestic knights shouldn't have to partake in, and provide military support where the knights just aren't capable of operating. So if they're doing a big siege of a hive city or something like that, it's the Auxilia or the Pypherion auxiliaries that form the siege line, and they do the grunt work. And then when it's time for a big push, well, you know, they probably take the majority of the cannon fire. Not that I'm suggesting that they're in any way, shape or form cannon fodder. And the knights come in to sort of act as the breaching teams and go in, break the city in full after the auxiliary has been spent upon the walls. You know, just like a good old chivalrous knight should do. Send the peasants in first. Yeah. So that's the way that works. And then we also have Legio Invictorum, who are a Titan Legion closely allied to the forces of Pypherion, because their Forge World is very close by, in fact in the same system. And so they send their god machines to support the Knights of Dracaran and the Pypherion auxiliaries. They march side by side as allies, and have done since the times of the Horus Heresy. I'm still working out some kinks of the idea of the law there. But yeah, we're gonna be finishing up the stream in just a moment. So I just thought I'll quickly show you the leg. Obviously, I still haven't done the back yet. But there we go. That's the leg that has been painted up almost to completion. To be fair, it's not too far off. But that's what the banding looks like with the red. So obviously once a wash goes on that, it'll all tie it all together and look beautiful, hopefully. So So yeah, I'm basically going to go through and finish off all the banding and add in the extra details, and then this guy will be ready for a big old wash. Trying to decide whether I'm going to do that banner pre-wash or not. Probably after the wash, I think, because I'll probably use some contrast on it to get some colour on it. I'd thunk. So yeah, I think that is pretty much me done for today. I think. Well, I say done for today. Like I said, I'm going to carry on with these guys, and I'm going to try and get them finished. I at least want to finish this one and get most of the way through that one, but ideally before I pack him for the night I want to get them both done. But they're looking quite good. You can kind of see, in a couple of hours, well, alright, in 3 hours time we've gone from that to that, with obviously a lot of decision making and stuff and chatting away going on in the interim, so it's not too bad progress really. Almost got an entire little night done in that time. So, not too bad. Probably could get the other one done. Hopefully we'll get the other one done before the end of the day. So hopefully, potentially by tonight. Actually it won't be tonight because all the basing and stuff takes a little while because of the drying times on PVA. So it probably won't be done. Well, there we are. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you to the few that are in chat. Thank you very much for listening in, and if I sent you to sleep, then I suppose you gained something from it. If you just enjoyed watching or listening, great. Do feel free to obviously join in chat, and I'll try and chat with you as I paint away. Hopefully, if you're watching this in the future, you enjoyed, and hopefully this will inspire you to come and watch whatever we're doing live at the time, or checking out our YouTube channel. So please do go and check these things out, and I really do hope you enjoyed, and I very much look forward to seeing you next time in the Mead Hall. Bye bye for now.